So hi everyone, welcome to Becker Digital. This is our Marketing to Generation Z webinar. This is the last webinar in our fall 2019 webinar series, and we're really excited to be wrapping up this year's series with such an interesting topic. Marketing to millennials has been a really hot topic in the world of advertising and organizational development for nearly a decade. While millennials are still very influential in our organizations and within the marketplace, Gen Zers have really come a long way and really come into their own as a very distinct generation that is and will continue to wield a lot of influence. I think for a while there, many thought Gen Zers were just going to be younger versions of millennials, but recent studies and observations have really brought to light the many generational differences that exist between millennials and Gen Zers, and that's where marketers really focus on, especially as to how these generational differences drive advertising response. So I'm really excited to be discussing this topic with you today. So kind of a quick intro. I'm Hannah Becker, Creative Director at Becker Digital. I've been active in the marketing and PR space now for over a decade. I really got interested in generational differences when it came to advertising pretty early on in my career, as the initial consumer response to social media was quite varied and pretty consistent along generational lines. For example, Facebook was once considered just something for college students, and now it's the fastest growing user demographic for Facebook is over 65. So that can kind of give you a little bit of insight into how these generational preferences and drives have influenced digital marketing and its development. My educational background includes a bachelor's degree from Mississippi State, a graduate certificate in nonprofit leadership, and a master's degree in business administration from Florida Tech. I've had the opportunity to teach business, computer science at multiple universities, and to share my expertise with multiple nonprofits and government agencies. Joining Becker Digital has been an awesome opportunity to kind of merge my interests, and it's allowed me to help organizational clients in advancing their mission. So for that, I'm very grateful. Just a little bit about Becker Digital. We are a veteran-owned small business headquartered in Pensacola, Florida. That's the photo of our beach view. We are a full-service marketing and PR agency. We've got extensive experience in multiple industries, including agriculture, education, government, healthcare, military, veterans, space, and nonprofits. Our team provides multiple services, including advertising, communications, marketing strategy, public relations, social media, and web design. If you'd like more information on Becker Digital or you want to discuss working together, just send us an email or give us a call. We'd love to learn more about your organization. So let's get started with the webinar. Here are a few of the highlights we'll be covering in today's webinar. We'll kind of meet Generation Z. We'll talk about how they're defined, who they are, what they believe, what they value, and how they think. Then we'll touch on Millennials versus Generation Z. We'll discuss notable differences and similarities between these two generations and try to talk about and touch on how that relates to your organization's outreach strategy. Then we'll talk about marketing tips for Gen Zers. My goal is to give you 4 actionable Gen Z-friendly marketing strategies that you can readily integrate into your existing marketing plan. And then we'll talk about embracing our Gen Z future. So what it'll look like, how Gen Zers are predicted to impact organizations, and how, as organizational leaders, we can be proactive in incorporating Gen Zers into our company and acknowledging them as a potential target market. Because reality is, Generation Z is our future, and if we ignore them, chances are our organization will become obsolete. So having a Gen Z-friendly marketing strategy is a step in the right direction for future-proofing a brand and really positioning our organization for sustainability in an ever-changing world. So let's get started. So the new kids on the block are Generation Z. They're disrupting many of the marketing tactics that organizations have relied on in the past to help them connect with audiences. Gen Z is a cohort right behind Millennials, and they're typically the children of Gen Xers. They were born between 1997 and 2012, which means Gen Zers have very little memory, possibly even no memory, of a world without a steady stream of sales-focused promotions, tech, and they're incredibly skilled at tuning out all things advertising. Gen Z consumers are distinct from their Millennial, Gen X, and Baby Boomer predecessors in how they interact with organizations and develop brand relationships. So recognizing these differences that exist can really help organizations improve their digital initiatives. As we talk about generations, I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview, catch you up to speed on how they're defined or how they'll be defined for the purposes of this webinar. So generations are typically defined in the United States by their birth years, which you can see on this graphic. So baby boomers are typically considered anyone born between 1946 and 1964. That puts them today in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Gen Xers were born between the years 1965 and 1980, which has them in their late 30s, 40s, and early 50s. Millennials, who are typically the children of baby boomers, they were born between the years 1981 and 1996, and they're currently between 23 and 38 years old. Gen Zers, the ones we're focusing on today, are typically the children of Gen Xers, and they were born between the years 1997 and 2012, which puts them between the ages of 7 and 22. While there's still some debate over the birth year range for both Millennials and Gen Zers, it's generally accepted to define Gen Zers as anyone born after the early to mid-90s. This is kind of the working definition that we'll be using. So some sources claim that Gen Zers will soon be the largest generation in the United States, overtaking both Millennials and Baby Boomers in numbers, but that's still pretty debated. Regardless of where you fall on the which generation is the largest camp, we can all agree that Gen Z will be a major player in our future. As Gen Z increases in age and economic power, their influence on our communities and organizations will be felt, across all industries. Understanding who the members of Gen Z are, what they prioritize, can really help organizational leaders position their agencies and companies for our very Gen Z future. Here's just a few interesting facts about Gen Z to give you a better idea of who they are as a cohort. So Gen Z is currently on track to be the most ethnically diverse generation in American history. According to some sociologists, they may soon be the largest generation, outnumbering their Millennial, Gen X, and Baby Boomer predecessors. The Economist described Gen Z as a more educated, well-behaved, stressed, and depressed generation than previous generations. We'll go into more detail about the characteristics that differentiate Gen Zers from other generations later in the webinar. It can be helpful to kind of start to wrap your mind around the events that have shaped Gen Z's psyche and continue to influence their consumer drives, which we'll look at here in the next slide. So, as you can probably guess, Gen Zers are super techie, much more so even than Millennials. So 98% of Gen Zers own a smartphone, and nearly half of the generation spends more than 10 hours a day on their mobile device. Gen Zers typically are very pro-education. Current college enrollment rates suggest that Gen Z will be the most educated generation in American history. Additionally, 43% of Gen Zers have at least one parent with a bachelor's degree or higher, compared with 32% of Millennials and 23% of Gen Xers. Gen Zers are also very concerned with student debt levels and have been observed as approaching higher education from a different perspective than that of previous generations. If you work in the educational space, higher educational space, that's something to be attentive and aware of. The average attention span for a member of Gen Z is 8 seconds, which is a very short amount of time for brands to connect and make the sale. That means lengthy videos like this one won't really be prime Gen Z media material. Acknowledging the window of opportunity with Gen Z consumers is important for organizations to consider when planning their communication strategy. Gen Zers also grew up in wealthier households than their Millennial predecessors did. And that experience was influenced by macroeconomic cycles and has certainly shaped the very distinctly Gen Z mindset that differs from that of the chronically cash-strapped millennial. Gen Zers approach money differently, and they engage in the consumer purchasing process in a manner that's quite different from that of millennials. Also, while the September 11th terrorist attacks influenced the attitudes of millennials in the United States, many report this event as the most influential event of their entire lifetime. The majority of Gen Zers have little to no memories of 9/11, and their perspectives regarding military terrorism and foreign policy may be a little different than that which is associated with millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, the generations that were alive during this time in American history. So when we're talking about millennials and Gen Zers, there's kind of this digital native standoff in the world of marketing. There's a lot of conversation around which generation should you focus on for ad campaigns, which generation is going to revolutionize, social media space and digital marketing strategies, and then which generation, will change or prompt the change in how organizations interact with consumers. For nearly a decade now, the conversation around millennials, so how to market to them, how to work with them, how to connect with them, has dominated organizational development. Millennials have been accused of a lot of things, including tanking industries, upending societal norms, and destroying pretty much anything that remotely resembled like the pre-internet era, are credited with killing canned tuna, golf, motorcycle sales, paper napkins, and even yogurt. Some organizational leaders predicted that Gen Zers would just be a techier version of millennials, while others have forecasted that Gen Zers will be completely different altogether. In this webinar, we'll take a look at 3 ways Gen Zers and millennials are different, and 3 ways they're the same. And hopefully this will give you some information as you plan your kind of organizational development and marketing strategy. So as we mentioned, many organizational leaders thought that Gen Zers would just be a carbon copy of millennials, just a little bit younger. In fact, there was so much discussion over grouping the 2 generations together, like under the same generational classification. However, as more demographic information emerged, there is a very clear distinction between millennials and Gen Zers. These 2 generations are different in many ways, including their beliefs, expectations, and priorities. The differences that exist are forcing millennial-obsessed marketers to take note and change the way that organizations plan their strategy. So while most industry professionals are very aware of how millennials are impacting our world, far fewer are familiar with how they differ from their younger cohort. Due to their colossal size and corresponding impact, both generations will remain a high priority for organizations seeking a sustainable future. Understanding the differences is paramount for organizational leaders in any industry. So let's dive into the differences. The first notable difference is technological integration. So many millennials remember a world without smartphones, without social media, and without an endless stream of blinking, chirping, and flashing cell phone notifications. Their expectations regarding what constitutes a quality relationship and their expectations surrounding communication have been greatly influenced by millennials' former pre-tech lives. Millennial consumers want a relationship with brands, and this includes a relationship that is both online and offline. They love immersive in-person experiences like escape rooms, and they want the organizations they patronize to be easily accessible via the internet. Millennials are socially savvy, yet their social media usage differs greatly from that of the true digital natives, Gen Z. Technology has been a part of Gen Zers' lives since day one. So members of Gen Z may not even remember a world, a life before, digital explosion. Consequently, Gen Zers demonstrate a very different perspective regarding technology and the role that it has in their lives than millennials do. While millennials were able to maintain control of their digital footprint since its conception, many Gen Zers were online, or pictures of them were, before they were adults, courtesy of their tech-savvy Gen X parents. This early age integration of social media and other tech-related tools has greatly shaped Gen Zers' views towards technology, social media, and its many potential uses. Our second big difference is on social media consumption. So both Gen Zers and millennials use social media. However, they use it very differently. So millennials are profound publishers of online content. That's things like Facebook updates, brand reviews, trip synopsises. Millennials use social media as a sounding board for all aspects of life. Gen Zers approach social media from a different perspective. They prefer social media apps like Snapchat and WhatsApp over Twitter and Facebook. Disappearing content, so content that won't come back to haunt users later in their life, is an essential in-app feature for Gen Z social media users. Generation Z spends more time on mobile devices and streams more digital media content than any other generation. A 2018 survey by Pew Research revealed that 45% of Gen Zers were online almost constantly. YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat remain Gen Zers' top 3 favorite social media apps, as these social media platforms contain the in-app features that Gen Z users prioritize. While Facebook has enjoyed a long-standing status as the top social media app for previous generations, surveys show that Gen Zers are allocating their screen time elsewhere. Our third difference lies with brand loyalty. So millennials are notably more brand loyal and brand conscious than their younger cohort, Gen Z. In 2017, 60% of millennials reported brand loyal purchasing patterns, while only 42% of Gen Z respondents cited similar brand loyal behavior. Supporting organizations that align with their values often dominates the purchasing process made by millennials, even if the purchase price is high. Gen Zers, on the other hand, are reported to prioritize frugality, engage in price comparison, and shop around to find the best deal on the items that they want, even if that item is provided by a brand that's outside their kind of brand loyal base. Organizations are rapidly trying to crack the brand loyalty code for Gen Zers through the implementation of user-directed marketing campaigns, revitalization of the rewards-based loyalty programs, and the incorporation of more customer-focused tech-integrated experiences. Recognizing the generational differences that exist within the consumer purchasing process can help organizations develop a marketing strategy that will resonate with both millennials and Gen Z consumers. Just because they're both young, or currently young, and own a smartphone doesn't mean they spend their money the same way. So now on to how millennials and Gen Zers are similar. So they typically have similar views on policy. Millennials and Generation Z are the most diverse generations in American history, with Gen Z being slightly more racially diverse than their millennial predecessors. While white majority may have been the norm for baby boomers and Gen Xers, millennials and Gen Zers came to age in a much more diverse world. The shifting demographics, coupled with generation-specific effects of the recession, have greatly influenced how millennials and Gen Z view matters of public policy. Recent studies show that Gen Z and millennials are similar when it comes to politics, with a slight exception within the far-right political camp. The majority of Gen Z and millennial voters are increasingly progressive in comparison to their baby boomer predecessors on matters of gender, race, and sexuality. While Gen Z and millennials may differ somewhat on consumer preferences and economic expectations, the two digital native cohorts come together in favor of establishing a more inclusive society where diversity is viewed as an asset to the community. A second similarity between the two generations is their view on entrepreneurship. Both millennials and Gen Zers are entrepreneurial. However, Gen Z takes the cake when it comes to pursuing self-employment early on in their career. So according to Harvard Business Review, the majority of working teens, those would be Gen Zers, are foregoing a traditional entry-level job for more entrepreneurial endeavors like starting a lawn business, teaching music lessons, or building like a pet sitting clientele. Thanks to globalization, offshoring, and the devastating effects of the recession, millennials and Gen Zers are a lot in today's young Gen Zers presents multiple implications for modern organizations. This evolving career goal trend will continue to impact how employer benefits are structured to remain competitive, the frequency of contracting labor outside, an in-office team, and expectations regarding workplace autonomy and schedule flexibility. Organizations that foster and reward intrapreneurship within their culture will be better positioned to attract both millennial and Gen Z talent. So the third similarity that we're going to talk about today has to do with digital expectations. So both millennials and Gen Zers expect brands and organizations to be accessible online. They want to connect with the companies they patronize on social media, they want to receive support through electronic options, and they want to cultivate relationships with organizations online. If your organization is socially savvy, Millennial and Gen Z users will reward you with social media support. If your organization is absent or inactive from popular digital platforms, Millennial and Gen Z consumers may not even know that you exist. So organizations should prioritize a Millennial and Gen Z friendly digital communication strategy that focuses on building a community and follower engagement. Viral content and super trendy hashtags aren't necessarily required. Millennials and Gen Zers, they want authentic, consistent, and engaging digital presence. The social media trends, they come and go. The results that are generated from a user-focused communications campaign will close or has the potential to close generational divides and really engage the future. So as we're going to shift gears here a little bit, we're going to take a deeper dive into a deeper look into how organizations can effectively market to Gen Zers. And we're going to touch a little more on some of these differences and similarities and how that relates to your organization's social media strategy. So marketing to Gen Z, as you probably have already surmised, can be a daunting task, especially given that Gen Zers hate and rarely respond to marketing. So they don't like being sold to. Online advertisements, TV commercials, and even celebrity endorsements, they tend to fall short of getting Gen Z consumers' attention. They are so used to just tuning out ads. Remember that Gen Z, many members of Gen Z have very little memory of a world without a steady stream of sales promotions. They use ad blockers. They're just going to keep scrolling if something that's super commercial, super salesy pops up on their screen. So today we're going to go over 4 marketing tips that may help your organization connect with Gen Zers. While some of these tips may feel somewhat familiar to millennial-friendly marketing approaches, it's important to recognize the key differences and evaluate your organization's marketing strategy based on all members of the target market, including Gen Zers. So our first Gen Z-friendly marketing tip is to be where Gen Zers are. So prioritize the social media platforms that Gen Z users are on. As we mentioned earlier, Gen Z is very active online. They spend more time on mobile devices than any other generation. But unlike previous generations, they are not spending a lot of time on Facebook. So instead, Gen Zers are active on apps like Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube. Those are the 3 favorites for Gen Z. And it has a lot to do with those apps, the features for disappearing content, and the function of the mobile-friendly experience. And another possible reason for why they're on there is that their parents, their bosses, their teachers, and their grandparents aren't on these apps yet. like they are on Facebook. So additionally, the high concentration of similarly aged users can help keep the user's experience on apps like Instagram and YouTube fairly consistent. Prioritizing organizational presence on these Gen Z friendly social media apps is critical for brands seeking a piece of the Gen Z market. While Facebook and Twitter may be effective platforms for connecting with millennials, Gen Xers, and baby boomers, Gen Z consumers are spending their digital time, it's very concentrated on other social media apps. So our second Gen Z friendly marketing tip is that Gen Z consumers love video content. In many cases, they actually prefer video content on social media to an image or text-based post. According to MediaCakes, 71%, so that's over 2/3 of Gen Z, watch more than 3 hours of video online every day. Social media apps like YouTube that easily integrates video content, are favorites among this generation. 96% of Gen Zers routinely consume YouTube content. And the app of YouTube is reported to reach more 18 to 34-year-olds than any traditional television network in the United States. Organizations that are interested in connecting with Gen Zers should identify ways which they can integrate branded video into their communication strategy. Static posts containing stock images and corporate sounding copy just don't cut it with this new generation of consumers. Gen Zers expect to be entertained, and they want the opportunity to be engaged to social media priorities that many of the video-based social media apps provide. Additionally, live video streaming options like the ones offered through Facebook and Instagram offer Gen Zers an opportunity to engage with the brand in real time. So our third Gen Z friendly marketing tip is that we need to recognize that traditional advertisements are not consistently effective with reaching Gen Z consumers. So when we say traditional advertisements, we're talking billboards, commercials, direct mailers, print ads. These are rarely effective on Gen Z consumers, and Gen Z consumers are super accustomed to just sifting through overly commercialized content and just honing in on valuable content or content they deem valuable that's not trying to sell them something. So more than half of Gen Zers online today are utilizing some form of ad blocking software to avoid spamming. They favor genuine accounts over salesmanship, with 67% of Gen Z acknowledging their preference for seeing real people, not models, in advertisements. Such preferences have given rise to the multi-billion-dollar industry of influencer marketing, a rather novel advertising technique that delivers sponsored content through peer influencers with engaged social media followings. While celebrity endorsements may have been effective in reaching previous generations, Gen Zers are to connect with micro-influencers. These are social media personalities, bloggers and vloggers with less than 10,000 followers. And prefer influencers often over celebrities. Our fourth tip for marketing to Gen Z is that content marketing and SEO strategies are really, really important. So organizations that invest in content marketing and search engine optimization may be able to connect more efficiently with Gen Z, as Gen Zers are noted as conducting more Google searches than any other generation. Having a lot of valuable content that online users can easily find via search engines can really help brands gain visibility and engage potential supporters. So true digital natives, Gen Zers, are quick to seek out information, typically via a mobile device, with the goal of making informed decisions. Content marketing strategies coupled with well-placed sponsored posts through an influencer campaign can really position brands to capture the interest of the 20 and under crowd. Remember, to be concise, entertaining, and genuine when crafting Gen Z friendly content, because you only have a few seconds, 8 seconds according to the earlier statistics, to garner their favor in the form of attention and potential patronage. You really want to make all 8 of those seconds count. So just to recap the 4 key Gen Z friendly marketing tips that we covered. First off, organizations should prioritize social media platforms that Gen Zers frequent. So this is Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, TikTok, YouTube. Most organizations need a multi-platform social media strategy, which means they need to be on more than just Facebook. Being on Facebook can be great if all of your target audience is on Facebook, but chances are multiple generations are represented within your target audience, and thus you need to be where they are, and this can be accomplished by having a multi-platform social media presence. Our second Gen Z marketing tip was to incorporate video content into your social media strategy. So thanks to video creation and editing software like Animoto, Promo Video Maker, and Lumen 5, developing branded video content that's optimized for social media is now easier than ever. These don't even have to be lengthy videos. Remember, the Gen Zs have an 8-second attention span. A short 15-second video announcing a new program or an event can be much more engaging than a press release. Oftentimes, organizations have a wealth of written content that's already created, like on their blog or within their company, that can be easily adapted into videos. Our third tip was that traditional advertisements are not as effective at reaching Gen Zers as they may have been with previous generations. Gen Zers are super immune to traditional ads and will tune out the majority of commercialized content. That's one reason why influencer marketing has exploded like it has, because it provides marketers the opportunity to connect with the generation of consumers that just completely hates being sold to. And our last tip was that content marketing and SEO strategies were key for brand visibility. While these marketing elements were always important, they are especially important now that Gen Zers are on the scene and frequently searching for information via their phone. Prioritizing content marketing and SEO doesn't have to be a super big project. Just make sure your organization is consistently posting quality content. Take time to do keyword research, conduct an SEO site audit, and fix any major problems. Also, don't forget about SEO on your brand's social media channels. So use tags, add keyword-rich descriptions, complete your organization's profile, and make sure your brand's content can be found online. So hopefully that gave you some insight into marketing to Gen Z and wasn't too overwhelming. I want to shift gears here as we wrap up and talk a little bit about our Gen Z future and how Gen Zers have the potential to influence our community. So every generation, baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, influence business, culture, and government. While still relatively young, Generation Z is already wielding their influence in everything we do, from how we shop to what media is produced. Worldwide, Generation Z will be the largest group of consumers by the year 2020. Gen Zers are reported to influence 93% of household purchasing decisions in the United States, especially those involving food, household goods, and travel. Ignoring Gen Z will only work to the organization's detriment. Gen Z, like the generations before them, will change the world as we know it, and our organizations must remain agile and responsive to these generation-specific trends if they hope to have a future. Generational shifts impacting the marketplace are only scary if your organization is unprepared. So Gen Z is definitely going to be a major player in our future. By the year 2020, they are estimated or predicted to make up 40% of consumers in the United States. While Gen Z is currently smaller in numbers than millennials in the US, they're expected to have sizable purchasing power for decades to come. With the oldest Gen Zers in their early 20s, Gen Zers just started entering the modern workplace and are already influencing management styles and challenging established recruitment methods. Whether you work in human resources, marketing, or even government, Gen Zers are and will continue to impact your organization's future. Their timely entrance into our post-technology world has resulted in a distinct paradigm that drives their consumer behavior, much of which differs from that observed with previous generations. Recognizing the generational differences that exist among today's consumers can help organizations improve their digital initiatives. So if your organization is in need of a creative partner to assist with the development of a Gen Z-friendly strategy, please contact Becker Digital. We'd love to schedule a discovery call and talk about your organization. Our team can help you develop a marketing strategy that focuses on making meaningful connections and producing quality content that can position your organization for the future. This webinar wraps up our fall webinar series. However, we will be kicking off a spring webinar series in 2020. Be sure to visit our website, subscribe to our monthly newsletter to get notifications about other upcoming webinars and educational events. I really appreciate your attention today and look forward to learning more about how Becker Digital can help your organization. Thank you and have a wonderful day.